Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rekahak, Wadash. Double honors to the apostles of the great millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is your brother Ayash Gabar from the GMS Virginia camp, coming at you with another lesson that I pray that you find edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. And I was listening to Apostle Aramlab's lesson titled, "And They Shall Take Away Certain of You Being Idle." And, I got to looking at, he was going into how, these executive orders that are coming out are, being done or being put in place, to bring about the MOTB and their infrastructure and, all types of shit that, this devil wants to make happen. And so I got to looking at the Federal Register, the 2025 Donald J. Trump executive orders, and he signed 174 plus executive orders, and this isn't even including the most recent executive orders, to get the homeless off the streets. And this man is just writing laws, to not only, come against you Jakes, but to also come against, the man or the men of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. This is his last ditch effort, to put all his eggs in one basket. Salakia. When you think about it, this is his devil's last ditch effort, to make all of his dreams come true. He's trying to, do a lot with one stone. He's going after world domination. He's going after the world's economical system where, it would put these elites in a position that would be hard for, other people, to come out of, financially. Essentially, he's trying to make everybody servitude unto him based on their financial situation. He's going after the food system, to make it such that you have to depend upon him for, your daily subsistence. He's making it such that, he wants to make America white again, and what does that entail? That entails, again, getting rid of you Jakes, and even though this devil is doing all of these things right before your eyes, a lot of people just don't see it. You got some people who are starting to put it together, but for the most part, most people don't understand what's going on. Salakia. Most people don't understand what's going on, and those who are with him, are looking at it as if it's a good thing. And for a little while, it may be a good thing to them, to hopefully get their stolen country back or to make the streets so-called safe again. But everything that this devil has done, he's done it, based on money. He could have, cleaned up the streets a very long time ago. He had the financial means to do it, instead of, giving billions unto these other nations that rob, the locals here, you know. He's you you know, this devil, he could have done things, to get the homeless off the street. He could have done things, to make the people healthier. He could have done things, to make the people more aware of what's going on. He could have done so many things that could benefit the people, but that's not in his MO. That's not in, his lot. His lot is to take peace from the earth. His lot is to bring about mischief. His lot is to flip the laws of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai on his head, as it says in the book of Job, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. Well, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai allowed this devil to do damn anything he wanted to do to whoever he wanted to do it to, so that, judgment could be placed on him as the example of things of, to the other nations as far as what not to do, as well as us. We had to go through these things, to understand what wickedness actually is, because this man is truly wicked. These executive orders that, he's putting in place doesn't benefit the people, and it damn sure don't benefit you Israelites, not in any shape, form, or fashion. But here it is, you've here it is, you depended upon a system that, you voted for, that you looked up to. You looked up to democracy. You look up to the red and the blue. You looked up to everything about this place, and even to this day, a lot of you Jakes still try to uphold a wicked kingdom that's fallen. And when you look at what this man is signing and what he's trying to do, a lot of you Jakes should be aware of how, this devil isn't on your side. The scriptures say, never trust thine enemy. Well, you fucking Jakes are trusting everybody but the words of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Here it is. We say this a lot. The mercies of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is great. You don't understand how great the mercies of the Lord is, because, you wasn't given that eyesight to see what Yahweh Bashem Yahushai has right before your eyes, and that's his prophets. You haven't given the ears to understand the words that are coming out of the prophets' mouths. You haven't been using your spiritual Q-tips, to absorb this information, or your spiritual glasses, to see how wicked this kingdom is. But instead, you Jakes promote this place on every chance that you get. So here it is, this devil, this devil cut out food stamps and WIC and Section 8 housing for you women. But what have the prophets been telling you all along? Woe unto you women who are at ease. These are the words of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai directed towards you women, to let you know that many days and many years shall you be troubled. Well, what are you going through now? A lot of you women are going through job losses, and you don't have men, you don't have that stability in the house. And what men you have in your house, you raised at a very young age, to being feminine. You women have literally caused your own destruction. You have literally casted away the one thing that could possibly protect you in the time that's in the time that's coming. And I'm not referring unto your average Jakes or your average men. I'm talking about the men of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai who's actually doing the work, that they were commanded to do by Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. A lot of you women have actually forsook these men, and and you've taken them as being strange and crazy and, whatever it is that, you think the men of Yahweh Shem Yahushai are. But very soon you're going to learn that, you know, that was only your only source of protection. But anyhow, I'm going to break out some precepts, but I wanted to get into this website. It's called the Federal Register, and it goes into all of, or most of, the executive orders that Donald Trump has signed over the course of his reelection, and the list is quite extensive. You got some things on the list that were meant to prevent, information from being spread, as freely as it has been, and I'm referring to TikTok and, these other platforms that actually, go against their narratives and actually show you the information that you're seeking for, or the information that they're lying about. And it's it's a pretty extensive list, and it goes into nearly everything that would benefit this devil in his so-called new kingdom to come. So I'm gonna break out a few precepts right quick. The book of Psalms, chapter 94 and verse 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law? And that's what he does. He frames his mischief by law. He he actually entangles the people, in law, to the point where, you really can't do anything about trying to make your situation better unless he wants you to. Well, that's what time that we're coming into, the time of the MOTB, because everything that he's setting up is being set up as an infrastructure for the MOTB, and in a less populated Babylon the Great. He's gonna have his goons out there on the streets doing what they do, but for the most part, a lot of this is geared towards the infrastructure that they are looking to have manifest, very soon. And they're doing this by law, because they're not following the laws of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Oh no, they're totally adverse to it, because if they just follow one law, it would be against it. It would be against, it'd be against his nature. It'd be against his nature. In the kingdom, he's going to be forced to, with our boots on his fucking neck, or our feet on his fucking neck. But right now, he doesn't have to do it. But instead of following the laws of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, he does what? He creates his own laws. He creates his own laws that in most cases, before this new administration, most people went for it, to the point where even if they didn't like it, they knew, or they had a feeling that in 4 years the administration could change again. Well, this devil's talking about no more elections, no more future presidencies, no more this and no more that. And the people, or the Babylonians, or should I say the Egyptians, are starting to realize that, they're being set up for the okie doke. But again, the prophets have been out there in the highway and byways telling you of these things, warning you of, warning you of what this devil's plans are. And a lot of you jakes don't listen. That's why, you're gonna. That's why a lot of you are just gonna be caught unawares. Like a lot of these women who thought that law, well, who thought that bill wasn't gonna pass, that were in their food stamps in their Section 8s. Well, guess what? That shit passed. And a lot of them are fucking crying. Well, what more in that day when, all hell breaks loose? And so, if you think that the women are crying now, wait till you see what the men do. So it's about to get crazy out here, and this devil is laying the foundation through laws or through these executive orders, to bring about a system where he has total control. The book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse 4. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. The prophets of Great Millstone, or our apostles of Great Millstone, have been warning you of these things for decades, over 35 years, over 30 years, been warning you of these things. And then other men came in, under them, and continued to warn you. And then even more men came in after those men and continued to warn you. Yahweh Hashem Yahushua said, I have sent forth all my prophets. And the prophets of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua have been warning you. If you've been paying attention, it's no secret. But you jakes don't pay attention to these things. Instead, you get on these crazy social media websites and you want to do a fucking dance off where very soon everything is going to turn into the Hunger Games, where you're going to have to be doing a food off, fighting for food, fighting for water, fighting for your lives. And without Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, as your hedge, a lot of you are just going to turn to carnality. You're going to have faith in things that cannot save you. You're going to have faith in your weapons. You're going to have faith in the strength of Babylon. You're going to have faith of, other men, And unfortunately, a lot of you jakes are going to have faith in yourself because you've been taught that, the power comes from within. No, your power doesn't come from within. Your power comes from Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. He gives you your power because he is your power. And a lot of you Israelites have missed that mark. A lot of you jakes have missed that mark. And at the end, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it shall surely come. It will not tarry. 20, 30, almost 40 years ago, when the apostles, were out there on the highways and byways, and they're still out there on the highways and byways. But I'm talking about decades ago when they were warning you of these things that are coming to pass. A lot of you people mocked at it. You even smirked at it like, whatever. Well, at the end it shall speak and not lie. And this is the end. And it's not lying. Everything that our apostles, elders, and bishops have said has come to pass, and it is coming to pass. And now, again, you got some people scratching their heads and saying what they've been saying is true. But the multitude of you jakes don't even see that, even though this devil is making laws that go against you. ICE is against you. This judicial system is against you. The laws is against you. The monetary system is against you. Everything is against you. The food is against you. You know, it's not to make you healthy and strong. No. You know, the scriptures say one should be stronger than the other. Well, they know that we're stronger than them. And one of the ways that they're trying to even out the fucking playing field is to make you weak. You know, they've already got the modern sword where, you know, they could get you at a fucking distance. But they also have made Jake weak. Emotionally, physically, mentally, you know, spiritually. You know, this devil has used you know, he have used craftiness, you know, to destroy the nation of Israel. And now he actually thinks he's at the point where he can get rid of Yasharala altogether. Well, those days are over. You know, the scriptures say he shall no longer carry thee into captivity. You know, this is it. And as I said earlier, this is his last hurrah, you know, to make all of his dreams come true. He's putting all of his eggs in one basket. You know, he wants to bring down nations. He wants to bring down this economical system. He wants to chip everybody. He wants the obedient ones, you know, to be rehabilitated mentally. And those who cause a ruckus, he wants to destroy them. So he's putting all of his eggs in one basket. You know, he's very meticulous about the way he's doing things, but as of lately, he has become very sloppy to the point where a lot of people, or a lot of nations, are actually starting to see the outline of what he's trying to do. You know, Habakkuk 2, jumping continuing in the book of Habakkuk, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. You know, this devil's soul isn't upright in him. You know, he has faith in carnality. He has, you know, he doesn't follow the ways of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. He wasn't built to follow Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. He was built to be that man of perdition. You know, he's built to be that example of what not to be. He's built, you know, to be that man or that house that's going to be destroyed for the other nations to see, as I said earlier, of what not to be. You know, because this devil has got a lot to pay for. You know, he can sign as many executive orders as he wants to, and he is. But the ultimate winner out of all of this is, you know, the nation of Israel, beginning with our Lord and Savior, you know, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. The book of Isaiah, chapter 47 and verse 6, I was wroth with my people, I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Yeah, you know, the earth was given into the hands of the wicked. And not only did the earth was given into the hands of the wicked, you know, the apple of the Lord's eye, you know, was also handed over to this devil because we went off. You know, we started following other gods. You know, and this place was meant as a place of our, you know, of our punishment. But this devil this devil went above and beyond, you know, the affliction that we were supposed to have gotten. You know, he furthered it, you know, because he got proud. You know, he wasn't judged readily as he committed all these atrocities against Yasharallah. And giveth them into thine hand, thou didst show them no mercy, and upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. Yeah, you know, this devil doesn't care. You know, here it is, he just signed an executive order, you know, to get the people off the streets. You know, and a lot of people that you're starting to see on the streets are older people, vets, and even young people. A lot of women, older women, young women. You know, you're starting to see all types. And this devil doesn't care what you are or who you are. You know, if you're on the street, you're going to be rounded up. And then they got the nerve to say, you're going to be taken up the street and rehabilitated. What the fuck you mean rehabilitated type shit? I might have said it wrong, but, you know, essentially he wants to take you to a fucking camp. You know, he wants to make America great again. You know, he wants less of you jakes on the street. He wants less people on the streets because to him it's a fucking eyesore. You know? Jumping down to verse 7. And thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst thou remember the latter end of it. This devil has not considered the things that he's done. He has not considered, you know, the repercussions of his actions. You know, so these executive orders are going to be turned upon his own head. You know, the traps that he has laid for the elect of Yasharallah is going to be, you know, flipped on him. You know, here it is, you know, he has not considered Yahweh wa Yahweh Shai, because his pride has told him that the Lord is with him. You know, this devil actually thinks that the Lord is altogether with him, to the point where, you know, he can do whatever he wants, even in this stage of the game. He sees the prophets out there. You know, he sees, you know, the chariots in the sky. He sees these anomalies happening. He understands these things. He knows these things. But his pride is telling him that it's, you know, he's going to fulfill his enterprise. That's what his pride is telling him. And Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai is about to make this devil very low. And these executive orders fall nothing short of being prideful. Nothing short of being prideful. To the point where anybody who's with this devil accepts it, just so long as it benefits them. But that's the beginning of it, because when, you know, the MOTB comes out, you know, the book of Revelations, chapter 13, is going to be in full effect. You know, so I just wanted to bring this out, you know what I'm saying, is because this devil is still making laws, and very soon the implementation of a lot of these things that, you know, he signed his name on is, you know, it's going to be done. You know. Excuse me. And so with that, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakaha, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. Shalom.